I wish to begin my speech by expressing my warmest thanks to Dr. Tripodakis, firstly because he took the risk to invite me to this conference. Being a monk, I feel out of place, for I am supposed to remain silent according to the monastic tradition of the Church. It is written, above all, love silence, and not show my teeth when I smile. It is also written, when you laugh, be careful so that your teeth may not be shown. Instead, I was asked to play the odd role of a speaker who addresses dentists at a conference on dental aesthetics. A person whose sole relationship with dentistry is that half of his teeth have been repaired, a fact that shows his disobedience to the rules of mouth hygiene. I wonder whether this invitation is an appropriate one, given the fact that Dr. Tripodakis knows better than anyone else the condition of my mouth, which I will open to speak, but I will try to hide my teeth so as not to show the defects. Dr. Tripodakis is not only an excellent technician and scientist, he is what his introductory speech revealed, a poet, a philosopher, and an artist. A man of rare sensitivity for truth and beauty, or rather for the combination of both. Since I'm also a priest, I suppose that he invited me to perform the marriage of the beauty of the face with the truth of the person. Therefore, I wish to thank him very much for the challenge. I will start my presentation with a simple observation. In Greek, the two words face and person are expressed by a single one, the word prosopon. The word prosopon firstly refers to the countenance, the external appearance of the front part of the head. Secondly, and most importantly, it has to do with the manifestations of man's volition, his character, the reflections of his inner world, the characteristics of his mental gifts, the degree of his freedom, and the depth of human existence. All these elements determine the identity of each human being. Taking a look at Webster's New World Dictionary, we find that by face we mean the front of the head, from the top to the bottom of the chin and from ear to ear. It means the appearance, the outward aspect of an individual. Similarly, countenance is the look on a person's face that shows one's disposition or feelings. Person is what you really are, and face it is what you actually show. In other words, in the Greek mentality and life, you are supposed to show what you are. Moreover, the image and face of an individual is interrelated with his or her person. Being dentists, you work on the faces of people. However, this greatly affects the very core of the patient's person. It presupposes that as doctors, you do not only work with your hands, but you also express your inner feelings, your kind concern, and your own sense of aesthetics. In that sense, as you practice dentistry, you are not merely touching the teeth of a patient, but rather you let your inner being touch upon his very soul. Especially as prosthetic dentists, when you add something new, this is what prosthesis means, or when you replace something broken, you create, you make a change. As you intervene in the human face, you actually play the role of imitating nature or even correcting it. You're not just replacing a broken tooth. Let me go now to the essence and uniqueness of the person. Personality is the combination of natural, spiritual, mental, and social characteristics of man. It is also the totality of any other elements that add to the uniqueness of every person. Person, according to Saint Maximus the Confessor, is the inner state of the soul upon which virtues are imprinted. In other words, we could say that person, namely the deeper identity of each human being, his uniqueness and worthiness, is something beyond his external image and countenance, beyond his senses and anatomic characteristics, his physiology, mobility, mechanical functions, biochemical or biophysical processes, something more than a combination of genes. Person is the unique and irreplaceable identity of each human being, which yet is closely and directly linked with his biological image and expression. It is interesting to know that two parents can give birth to 10 to the 40th power genetically different children. This huge number emerges from the combinations of the 23 chromosomes of each parent by 2 and from the arrangements of these combinations by 23. The total number of people living on Earth is just 7 billion, 7 times 10 to the 9th power. The number of those who have lived so far on Earth is estimated to be in the order of 10 to the 11th. These numbers are indicative only of the genetic variety of the external appearance. If we also add the different effect that the environment, the upbringing, and free will have upon each human being, one can understand the inconceivable value of the uniqueness of each individual, of each person. Now, what is the context of the teeth? Namely, the field of work of a dentist. It is anything that defines the distinguishing uniqueness of the prosopon, both as external appearance, face, and as his inner being, personality. Firstly, the context of the teeth is the lips, the area around the mouth, the eyes, the cheek, the chin, the entire countenance. The context of the teeth, however, is not only the mouth or the face. Above all, it is the person, how man thinks, how he feels, who he is, even if he himself does not fully realize it. It is the content of his soul that is reflected upon his face. It is the hidden man of the heart. Primarily, anything that safeguards the uniqueness of the face's image and does not disturb the balance between soul and body, face and person, image and content, forms the context of the teeth. This means that every addition or correction on the face is a responsible act when it concerns our own self, but becomes a sacred act when doctors apply it to their patients. I will move to the concept of unity. The title of my homily insinuates how the unification of the several components that create the context of the person's image, namely of the face, contribute to the identity, integrity, and dignity of the prosopon. Therefore, firstly, I would like to refer to the concept of unity in nature. Given intuition and experience, one can see in the deeper mystery of nature, in our inner sense of goodness, and in our most finely attuned strivings for the truth, that all converge on meanings such as harmony, unity, and oneness. Likewise, it is commonly accepted that whatever divides, splits apart, or separates takes us further from the truth, disorientates, and clouds any aim. One needs only to glance at the universe to be convinced that it is governed by harmony. It might be expanding and all its points moving further away from each other, but this only bears out the one beginning of the universe, of the world, when all space was gathered into one point. Time was one moment. Matter was a condensed physical entity with a tremendous dynamic when everything was one. In the cause and effect of physical laws, in the relativity of the uncertainty of these laws, even in the cosmic chaos, one can detect regularities, symmetries, and organization. There is a harmony between the small and the large, the slow and the fast, the extremely hot and the cold, the new and the old. In the universe, everything is linked in concord. In the present day, the great theories that try to explain the deepest laws of nature are called grand unification theories. The efforts of scientists are focused on demonstrating that the four fundamental forces, weak interaction, strong interaction, electromagnetic forces, and even gravitational forces, are in essence manifestations of one single force. Quantum mechanics and the Standard Model theory describe phenomena at the level of the very small, while the theory of general relativity explains gravity and the phenomena of the macrocosm. Moreover, research on the beginning and the very secrets of the universe, namely of the very large scale, is carried out today by high-energy physicists specializing on the very small scale. In the study of the early universe, we find cosmology meeting elementary particle physics. Biology reveals a similar story. In this field, we observe that life begins with the fusion of two cells. As we step backwards, evolution theory maintains that there was an initial convergence of beings and a relation between them. Our genomes are more alike than different, and this observation binds us to each other and in turn links us to nature. Unity is also the cornerstone of society. The ideal and the best, or Ariston, according to Plato, is to make the city one, an aim pursued by every society, which is also the precondition for their survival, is the concept of social cohesion, the idea of the Bible that all may be one. Finally, in psychology and in Christian anthropology, the lack of unity and harmony between the forces and the faculties of the soul manifests a pathological condition. Schizophrenia, bipolarity, inner split, or the rupture between what we truly are and what we appear to be, between what we want and what we can, between feeling and thinking, acting and becoming, constitutes unhealthy conditions, causing all kinds of different aberrations and unhappiness. The union of the mind with the heart, the eradication of the aforementioned ruptures, and the cultivation of every kind of virtue underline the importance of wholeness, of the unification of the person. This is the way to genuine life and true freedom, to the consistency of one's conduct with his beliefs, and ultimately to the virtues. Virtue means composition, synthesis, and unification of the person's forces into what is good. The final pursuit is not psychoanalysis, but if I may say, it is psychosynthesis. It is interesting to note that the three words harmony, excellence, the best, and virtue that I have used to describe unity in nature, unity in society, and unity in personality, respectively, in Greek all begin with the syllable ar, harmonia, ariston, areti. This points to their common etymological derivation from the Greek verb ararisko, which means to bring together. Likewise, in theology, the entire Christian tradition is based on the dogma that God is one in three persons, mutually in communion. Thus, everything refers to unity, communability, and oneness. Returning to unity forms a universal law of balance, a condition for harmony, a prerequisite for integration, and a means for restoring to health. This all-pervasive sense of unity that is found in the forces of nature, in the laws of life, in the expressions of the soul, in our relations with each other and with God, constitutes the basis of social and spiritual values and on the psychosomatic balance. In that sense, I would prefer to change the title from Contextual Unity of the Human Face into Contextual Unity of the Human Person. The image of the human being is directly related to his person. It is what we first see when we meet someone, what creates the first positive or negative impression, what associates him with his name, what remains as a memory, what constitutes the expression of his countenance and face. This is also the reason why we care for our face more than any other part of our body. This care can be treatment of a serious or mild injury, neoplasmatic diseases, maxillofacial injuries from accidents. It may be the correction of an inherent facial imperfection, a scar or a mole. It may also be a general lifting of the face. An intervention may care for the face, highlight it distinctly or improve it. It may cure it when it suffers from an illness. It may make positive or negative changes, but it can also destroy it irrevocably. The natural face hides something very profound, which is closely connected with the inner person of man. In the biblical books of wisdom, we read, "A man may be known by his look, and his wisdom is reflected on his countenance. A man's excessive laughter, showing his teeth and his guide, show what he is." The responsibility of medicine is to cure an illness or to correct a defect. It is not to change the facial expression, create a false appearance, or even more so, let dental practice be controlled by commercial demands or mass media and advertisement interests. A correction may be aesthetical in order to make the face as natural as possible, as true as possible, free from the ugliness of the imperfection. The image of people with bright teeth, fake expressions, standardized beauty, and stretched skin incompatible with their age makes their external appearance false, removes any sign of truth, makes them slaves of commercialization, and finally offers them the expensive ugliness of a non-genuine beauty. It is obvious that the interventions in the face greatly affect the person of the patient. That is why the protection of the person presupposes the safeguarding of its dignity, integrity, and identity. In this sense, a dentist is not a skillful technician, a brilliant scientist, or a charismatic poet, but rather he is someone who performs a sacred act. By the term dignity, we mean the quality of being worthy of honor or respect. Consequently, as doctors of the faith, we ought to respect the patients, taking into account their own opinion, what they ultimately desire and feel right for their own selves, by offering them the time and information they need so as to understand how they will eventually look like. Moreover, we ought to avoid anything that will destroy their self-esteem and to acknowledge that their freedom is worth more than our expanded knowledge and willingness to help them. The term integrity expresses the fullness of the personality, the quality of being honest and fair, the state of being complete or whole. This means that we ought to help the patient find out what he really wants and realize that what appears beautiful to him, it is not necessarily perfect for another person. Finally, identity defines all the qualities, beliefs, etc. that make a particular person or group different from others. It is the distinguishing character or personality of an individual which we ought to protect, not to alter his or her image by correcting the defect, but instead proceed to the treatment by preserving the identity, namely the uniqueness of his or her image. Respectively, dignity, integrity, and identity require respect for the value of each human being, sensitivity to the wholeness of his personality, and attentiveness to the details of his prosopon. The psychosomatic balance and the sense of his sacredness constitute the aim for the ariston, for the excellence of the prosopon. It would not be ethically accepted to ignore the consent of a patient. His volition reflects his soul, his person. Therefore, if a specific medical treatment is absolutely necessary, we must first try to explain and convince the patient of its necessity. Cosmetics is supposed to make someone look more beautiful, but very often it alters the truthfulness of the face. It does not necessarily correct its imperfection. By making the face look more beautiful, we may end up distorting the very person of the patient. In conclusion, physical asymmetry may grant freedom, truth, and beauty. On the contrary, artificial symmetry and technological perfection oftentimes destroy the uniqueness, the freedom, and the genuine beauty of the person. It would be a great mistake if prosthetics replaces a missing tooth but takes away the dignity, integrity, and identity that the patient needs. The same applies to orthodontics. It would be wrong to straighten the crooked teeth but destroy the self-esteem of the patient. He may look more symmetrical but feel a different person and uncomfortable. The dentist does not only intervene in the face, the external image of man, but more specifically, he treats the mouth. It is interesting that crying, smiling, laughing, singing, and other facial reactions are expressed on the countenance of each human person. Teeth play a significant role in all these facial expressions, either visibly or invisibly. Apart from using the mouth to chew, we also use it to articulate our voice, the tone of which constitutes a characteristic of the human identity. The voice is being formed by the larynx, the pharynx, the tongue, the geometry of the mouth, but also by the teeth. In the Greek language, some of the consonants, taf, delta, and theta, are called odontika, tooth letters, because we use our teeth to pronounce them. When we part from a person, what relates us with him, on one hand is the image of his countenance, and on the other hand it is the sound and tone of his voice, which have been recorded in our memory as a faded image of his face. The recognition and identification of a human being is effected mainly by his face and voice. The mouth, however, apart from articulating the voice, also constitutes an instrument of words, logos. It is the echoing of the soul and mind. A human being is firstly recognized by the expression and image of his facial form, but in essence, he is revealed by his words and thoughts. The countenance gives the first impression and insinuates the identity of a human being, while logos, words and thoughts, helps in getting to know the prosopon, in revealing the inner world of the heart, his or her very depth. Prudence is usually expressed through silence, while wisdom is revealed through words. The organization of thoughts takes place in the mind of a human being, but is formed and articulated through his mouth. There are people who are very sharp in organizing their thoughts, but poor in expressing them with words. The combination of the noetic function with the expressive one reveals the prosopon of each human being. This is why both are expressed by the same term, logos. According to the Christian experience, the mouth that we touch as dentists and the natural face that we care for have a certain sacredness and constitute par excellence parts of the body that express the deeper person, that which is created after the image of God. When it is sanctified, it can be transformed into a face of an angel, or shine as the sun, or become otherworldly, as in the case of certain ascetics who live a saintly life. Dental bioethics is not an ethical compliance with deontological rules. These can easily be invented and even more easily violated. It is not a bioethics that helps the dentist be correct and accepted by law and society. This is not so important. It is mainly a practice that demands a profound sense of respect from doctors who, although intervene therapeutically, they actually touch upon the sacredness of the human identity and uniqueness, upon the face and speech, the person and logos. The patient entrusts us with his or her innermost self, and thus expects from us our deepest respect. Thank you.